Right, guys, a very busy summer ahead for Celtic. We know that by now. We're facing the rebuild of all rebuilds. Probably about a dozen players are going to leave the club. We're probably going to have to sign about the same number. Jackie, it's a big summer ahead. Are you excited by it? Are you daunted by the prospect of it?
No, I think excited. I think there's going to be a lot of change. I think you've got to look at it in the right way. That it's new energy coming in. People want to do well, want to be there at the club, and it's a new era. But I think it's one to look forward to rather than worry about it.
Euan, same question to you. Are you looking forward to seeing the new players coming into the club, or do you think we could end up in a bit of a state for next season?
Hugely, yeah. No, I'm excited. It reminds me a bit of Martin O'Neill coming in, of Gordon Strachan's first, like the summer before Armida, Bratislava, when everything looked rosy, and a little bit like 2016 to an extent. I think these things are always exciting because we generally don't know what the team's going to look like in August, September. So no, it's good. It's something to definitely be excited about.
Jackie, if you're a player, are you looking forward to seeing what new teammates you're going to have, or are you worried that someone's going to come in and take your place?
I think probably a bit of both. Obviously, the important one, obviously, the manager as well, the management team. To want to be part of the plans, want to be, even if they're under contract, they still, it might be one that they said, it might be better that you're moving on because you're not going to play. So even players that have maybe got 2-3 years left to go, it might be one that they end up moving on because they're not going to feature as much as they'd like. And I think you'll know that once the new manager's appointed and obviously the director of football and recruitment side of it. So there's a lot of activity that's going to happen over the next. I know we keep saying it most weeks, but we're just about there, I'd imagine.
Eventually, Jackie, if you keep saying it, it'll happen eventually. Right, I want to have a chat in a minute about the figures we're going to be talking about. How much money will Celtic have to spend? Just a bit of a spur of the moment thing that's just come into my head. Why don't we work our way through the squad just quickly in terms of positions and just kind of work out what we need? So feel free to chip in, guys. Goalkeeper, do we need to sign a keeper, Jackie? Or are you hoping that Barkas turns into a good one? Fair enough.
No, I think we need a goalkeeper. I think we need a established number one. It's a clear number one. Obviously, you've got backup there. The moment Bain's been the number one choice for a number of weeks now. But Barkas at the start, then Neil had said that the Rangers game that he brought him back in, that he brought him in to be number one, but it's not been the case at all. So I'd imagine if he's not number one with a new management team, that it may be one that he will move on again and go somewhere else in the summer and bring a number one in.
So I think 3 is the ideal number, isn't it, for goalkeepers? That's the number you want at the club. So Barkas, you think, could be the one to move on? Could Bain be the one to move on, do you think?
Possibly. I think that he might want to play and might want to be at this stage of his career. He might feel that he is number one and want to go and prove that. Just depends, really. I think we'll not know that until obviously the new manager comes in and obviously Woodsy does the goalkeeping coach. He's been there for a number of years and don't know if he has the say in who's number one or who's 2 or 3 or whatever, or who holds the jersey. But I think this season we've seen it's such an important position. That's it's been crucial, and it's been a big factor in Rangers' success this year with their goalkeeper starting there. It's probably been one of their best players, along with a few others.
Euan, Barkas has surely got to be number one or not at the club at all. Do you
absolutely
disagree with that? I mean, we paid £5 million for him. He can't go and just be a number 2 next season, can he?
No, I mean, I think the way that Barkas has been treated has been pretty shameful, really, in truth. Obviously, he was thrown under the bus so quickly that after that, I don't really know how you recover at a club, to be honest. And obviously, we don't know kind of, the behind-the-scenes stuff. There was maybe a problem with Barkas in training. Maybe his attitude's not quite right, but he's just another player to me who's come in, to a foreign country in the middle of a pandemic, and clearly something's not quite worked in terms of integrating him, and that's a real concern. But I think he's one of these players. I mean, he was signed with such kind of high regard, especially in Greece. But there was clubs all over Europe kind of looking at him at the time. It's not like we didn't have any competition, so you got to assume that he's number one or nothing really.
Right, goalkeeper, I've ticked that one off. I've started a list here, so I've written that down. Fullback, I think we've only got Greg Taylor in the building by the time that Laxalt and Kenny go away to their parent clubs. Jackie, how many we need signed in those positions then?
I think we need 3. I think we need 2 right backs and we need another left back as well for cover and to challenge. I think you need 2 for each position. I think it's crucial. But right backs, obviously we haven't got any in the building at the moment. And Ralston, but he's been there quite a while, but never been given an opportunity despite it being a real problems. He had a spell a couple of years ago. In fact, it's more than a couple of years ago now, isn't it? The Barcelona games and everything else. So he seems to have fallen right down the pecking order. It's clearly, obviously, with positions that we need 2 right backs and another left back coming in.
It really is like a game of Football Manager, isn't it? When you start the season and you actually have to clear out your entire team. It's a daunting task ahead of us. Centre back, Euan, who have we got centre back wise? We'll have Julian there. We will have Chris Ayer there for how long? It remains to be seen. Stephen Welsh is there. Near Beaton, if you can even class him as a viable option at centre back, I'm not so sure.
It's a difficult one. I think Welsh, you can count him in. Christopher Julian, absolutely. I think he'll be the sort of bedrock of the defence next season. But beyond that, it's hard to know. I do think Chris Ayer is on his way out. I do think we can probably get quite a decent fee for him. But beyond that, it's just pretty sparse. People talk about Jack Hendry being the answer. I'm not so sure myself. I think, he's been impressive in Belgium, but whether or not that translates to being reliable for Celtic, I'm not entirely sure. It's pretty concerning.
Just give me a number, Jackie. Centre backs, how many are you going for?
I think 2 centre backs to come in.
Good enough.
I think with Julian, obviously, he needs to come back from injury, whenever that will be. Welsh, I think he's done okay. He's progressing well, but I still think he's got a good bit to go to get a real consistency and experience in his game as well, and needs that competition.
Midfield wise, the big gaping Scott Brown hole that's going to be left when he moves on. We'll have Callum McGregor there. We'll have Ismail Assoro. I think for holding midfielders, Near Beaton again could fall into that category. Olivier Ncham will come back to the club, but I don't think he really has a future at the club. Is Scott Brown someone you have to replace in that midfield, Jackie? Or is Ismail Assoro already the replacement that's at the club?
I think you'd be hoping that he's a replacement. Obviously, they're different characters in terms of leadership and taking responsibility, but you're hoping the other ones that will stand up. We mentioned McGregor there, that he can stand up and lead by example and fill that gap, if you like, with Scott Brown leaving. Sorrell seems to be the one that you're hoping that can take that opportunity next season and have a real consistency in his game. But I still think they need maybe another 1 or 2 midfielders to come in. For just purely because you need the competition, you need everybody in that consistency in the team and pushing each other.
Euan, wings, we've got James Forrest who'll be there. Say El Yunusi doesn't come back to the club, you're probably looking at a left winger. You're certainly looking at another right winger to give a bit of competition to Forrest. So that's another 2 players.
There's been some really interesting free agent kind of news emerging the last few weeks. I wrote about a free agent 11 who could feasibly come in a sort of fantasy scenario. But there's players like Joshua King who can play off that left side. He's someone that Eddie Howe is familiar with. Again, provided that we get Eddie Howe and with all the caveats attached. But he's someone that could be potentially useful, although he's slightly on the older side. There's players like Isaac Mbenza from Huddersfield Town. There's some really good value wingers available for, well, not next to nothing essentially. So there's definitely value there. But at the moment, it's very, very concerning that we've kind of left our squad. And like attacking wingers were such a kind of attacking like fulcrum of what was good about Celtic in the last 9 seasons. You know, having variety in the wings, different kinds of players who can cut inside, players who get to the byline. All of whom could cross a ball, and then to be left with so few is pretty concerning. So there's definitely value to be had. It might be one of the positions where we either, you know, pull off a masterstroke and get a couple of players in for peanuts, or it might be where we end up spending the most money. I don't know, but it's extremely concerning that we've got to this point. And obviously there are youth players who can come in and play those wide positions, but whether or not they're physically ready for the first team on a regular basis anyway, kind of remains to be seen. So yeah, that's going to be one of the more interesting options, I think.
Attacking midfield, probably the only position we're relatively strong in. You've got Turnbull that can play there at the moment. You've got Rogic and Christie, and even someone like Euan Henderson a bit further down the pecking order that could play there if required. So I'd say we're probably all right there. Striker wise, again, Jackie, you're looking at probably at least 2 strikers coming in.
Yeah, I would imagine so. You know, obviously Kamala's left, and there's still question marks about other ones that are out on loan, Shved and Bayo. Are they going to come back? But I do think they need at least 2 to come in. You know, all accounts looks like Eduardo will probably be leaving, going into his last year. He'll probably go in the summer as well, the reports. And Griffiths, we need to. We still don't know what's happening with Griffiths yet, if he's, you know, getting that extra year or he'll be leaving. But I do think we'll need 2 strikers, and I'd like to see some real pace in the team in that last third as well. Another winger, just somebody that takes people on and tries things and gets at people. I think we've kind of lacked that throughout the season. You know, just seeing little glimpses, obviously with Forrest coming back, but just that injection of pace. As he said, I think when guys like Sinclair and that came into the team before, when he first came in, getting at people and having an end product and scoring goals, and I think we've kind of missed that over the last sort of, you know, year, 18 months.
So I think here in our signing list we've virtually got a whole team, 11 players, a goalkeeper, 3 full-backs, 2 centre-backs, 1 centre mid, a right winger, a left winger, and 2 strikers. So 11 players, given how inflated the world of transfers is nowadays. You know, that's a fair amount of money we might have to spend. This season we spent around £15 million in total, including loan fees. We brought in about the same money selling Frimpong, Klimala and El Hamid. Last season we spent around about 20 million, with a fair chunk of that in Christopher Julian. We brought in about 26 million that same season, with the vast majority of that being Kieran Tierney. The year before, we spent about £13 million, with most of that in Odsonne Edouard. And that same year, we brought in 30 million through Sviatchenko, Armstrong, and of course Moussa Dembele. Roger's second season was 8 million we spent. In his first season, we spent about 7 million. In fact, going back into the entire 21st century, the most we've ever spent is 20 million, which was twice. We did that in 2019 and also in Jackie's time in the year 2000. So a lot of money there. We're certainly going to beat that, I think, this year. With the players we have to bring in and how expensive football is nowadays, we're going to have to spend well over 20 million. I think we're probably going to have to spend over 30 million. Jackie, will the money be there, considering that, you know, we could sell the likes of Odsonne Edouard, Christopher Ayer, Olivier and Cham as well?
I think you'd like to think that it would cover itself. You know, the ones going out would cover the ones coming in. I think that will be obviously important. On the downside, as I said before, they're going into their last year, so you can't command the same fees that you would normally. You know, you can't turn around and say we want 30 million for Edouard going into his last year. But I think it's trying to get as much as possible as they can, that they can reinvest that in quite a number of positions that the club needs. And as a number, and as you said, the market is expensive now for what you're getting, especially players that you really want. You know, you're hoping that they're coming into the last year in the same way that we're losing players into the last year for the value. So it's an important window coming up for ins and outs to get the right values.
Jackie's too canny to give us any sort of fees for Odsonne Edouard, but I'll ask you, Euan, if you want to add up Odsonne Edouard and Olivier Ntcham leaving this summer, what are you looking at for those two combined?
I think optimistically you're looking at 30 million. I think more realistically you're looking at between 25, 27. I think we could still garner a decent-ish fee for Ntcham, maybe slightly more than what we paid for him, just given the European experience he's had and the progression that I know a lot of people don't like Olivier Ntcham, but I think he has genuinely progressed as a technical footballer. And, there's a bit of recency bias because his first couple of seasons, he was really, really good. So I think we could still garner 4 or 5 million for him. I think it wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibility to sell Edouard for 20 million. I think that's the sort of commonly accepted price that we'll get for him, as far as I can tell. So yeah, I mean, if you count the 50 million that's already been generated from Frimpong, El Hamid, it's not looking too bad. But I guess the issue is whether that money's been reinvested into the club to make up the shortfall from COVID-19, or whether that's actually transfer money that we can spend. But I think either way, we're not going to be looking at a huge net loss, even with all the rebuilding that we have to do. So I think that puts us in a strong position at the negotiating table.
Jackie, are we going to have to rely on some sort of loan deals this summer? I know you're not a huge fan of them in general, or specifically bringing in players who aren't getting game time down south and hoping that they can make our seasons. But when you consider that we have to build an entire squad, are loan signings almost like a necessary evil this or next season?
Ideally not, but as you said, usually they don't usually happen till last minute because the teams come back and they start the pre-season, and then just as the season starts, the managers have their teams in place, and that's when they decide that they're not part of the plans, and they decide to put them out on loan. So you're not getting them early, especially for the European games, and so I think that could be an issue. But it might be one later on that might suit the club. If it's a top player that, in our eyes, it's not going to feature in the plans of their own manager. But as I said, that usually happens last minute in the windows and closing.
It does just kind of bring it home how tough a job we've got and how tough a job the new manager does have. We've got these European qualifiers coming up in, I think, less than 10 weeks now, and we quite literally won't have a right back in the squad when John Joe Kenny leaves, or certainly a capable right back. So a lot of work ahead, guys, but we'll do it the hard way as usual, I'm sure, at Celtic, and we'll end up with some youth player at right back in a crucial Champions League qualifier in 10 weeks, and it'll be a good laugh. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate you joining me for this video. Thanks everyone for watching. We are closing in 13,000 subs, so if you want to try and help us to that as soon as possible, that really would be appreciated. Subscribe to the channel now. It costs absolutely nothing, and we'll speak to you soon.